So welcome to the Zero Trust User Access reference architecture within the Microsoft Cybersecurity reference architectures. My name is Mark Simos, lead cybersecurity architect at Microsoft. Abbas?
Hey everyone, my name is Abbas Kudrati. I'm a chief security advisor for Microsoft Epic based in Melbourne, Australia.
And so Zero Trust, we've got several sections within the reference architecture talking about Zero Trust. One is an overarching overview. Another is the open group perspective, where the Jericho Forum was hosted for many years. And this one is focused specifically on the user access aspects of Zero Trust, because it is an overarching strategy. But the first thing that most organizations focus on for Zero Trust, and the first thing we recommend as well, is the user access. As organizations move to the cloud and adopt more and more mobile devices, it's so important to have access control for inside and outside of the traditional firewall and perimeter. So Abbas, did you want to kind of talk us through, user and device risk?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Mark. So two critical areas are really important when we talk about the Zero Trust along with the user access. And the first part we talk about is the user risk. How are we going to get this user risk, and what are we trying to achieve here? We want to know if the user who is working remotely or on-site, we explicitly verify every possible risk signals from his end, from the identity point of view. One could be multi-factor authentication, or could be his location, or could be his own group. Which user group does he belong to or she belongs to? Which application he or she has an access to? We need to collect all those relevant signals, and we analyze that along with many other threat factors, including Microsoft Threat Intelligence. We collect around 3 or 8 trillion signals on a daily basis.
I think it's 8.5 per day. Yes.
We increased it. Last I remember it was 6.2, and then we 8, and now 8.5. Oh my goodness!
Lots of signals.
A lot of signals. So we are ingesting all this learning through our machine learning and algorithms, and to analyze whether those signals from the risk signals from user, does it make sense? Are they risky enough or not? Which get ingested into our conditional access engine later on. That's from the user point of view. At the same time, we also want to know from the device point of view. Now in device, we want to analyze two critical areas. One is what is the security posture of that particular device in terms of threat, whether that device is infected with a virus or a malware or a ransomware. Second, we want to know if the device which is being used by the employee is managed, unmanaged, but at the same time, what is the current compliance factor of that device? So one example which I really like to give always is, if my security policy as an organization says that the device should maintain a certain level of patches, but if that patch level goes down, am I going to allow that device to get connected to my resources, which we'll talk about later, through conditional access? So that kind of signals we want to collect it, and that we do it in a multiple ways. One could be through our partner MDM products such as AirWatch and JAMF and others. But on the compliance part, we want to know from Intune, which really comes handy to identify whether the security compliance requirement is met or not in terms of patching, in terms of control, posture assurance and whatnot. At the same time, the threat part, we collect it through our Defender or any other EDR, which could be there as a part of it. These two is also a factor in terms of manage, unmanaged, that we get it from our Active Directory, which gives us kind of an inventory, what devices we have on the network. So taking user risk and device risk together, both two signals, as Mark, as you really say, is input, process, and output. So our input is all those signals from users and device, which then analyzed through threat intelligence signals. It goes back to our conditional access engine, which is the heart of it.
Absolutely. And they're two very important sources. The thing that we're trying to figure out on that user side is, what is our confidence that this user authentication and the session that's coming in specifically, is that the actual user, the biological person that we know and expect them to be, or is it someone impersonating them? Because that's the question we have to answer. And the way that comes in is a high, medium, low risk from Azure AD Identity Protection. That's really what feeds conditional access that it makes policy decisions from. And so there's a lot of sophisticated machine learning, a lot of different potential signal sources from Azure AD Identity Protection, as well as these other sources. But at the end of the day, you get a high, medium, or low risk, and that's your score for this particular user for this particular session. And then, of course, whether you have MFA, which we'll come back to in a moment. And then the question on the device side, like you said, is this device compliant? Is it compromised? Now, all of that comes down to a yes/no signal. You know, it is compliant, yes or no, and you get to set that policy in Intune. And that's based on all these different sources and signals, and you have a lot of control there. You know, good defaults, and we also have some other suggested configurations for privilege access and whatnot on how to do that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you decide, is this device compliant or not? And we've actually recently introduced some device filters for privilege access for things like PAWS or privilege admin workstations that, hey, it has to be compliant, the EDR has to say there's no malware, and it has to be one of this very specific set of workstations, not some random workstation. And so we now have the ability to do that. It's currently in preview, but will be released shortly.
Great.
And then the next piece is we want to run it through the policy engine, right? So we've got to apply policy to it. And so every time you log in, these kind of things are being done from the conditional access policy engine. And one of my personal favorite parts about this approach versus the traditional firewall approach, in the firewall days, it was block or allow. That's all you had. You either drop the TCP/IP connection or the UDP connection, or you don't. That's all you have. I mean, there was some attempts at doing quarantining and network access protection, network access control, but they were very complicated and very difficult to get right. And so they generally didn't work at most organizations. But the thing that I love about this is it's not intercepting the raw network traffic. It's intercepting an actual real-time interaction at the application identity level. And so we have the opportunity here to say, hey, you came in, but you didn't provide MFA, which, you know, would be fine for low trust resources, but you're trying to actually get to a, you know, reasonably valuable corporate resource or application. So we're going to go ahead and prompt you for MFA during the session. We're not going to block, we're not going to drop, we're just going to say, give me MFA now. Or, you know, check for it if it's already been checked on the machine. And that's a very important distinction because you get to actually have a graceful failure or a graceful ability to up-level the trust. So that's one of the things I love about having the identity-based controls over the network. Now, network still has its place. There's a lot of great places for network. But if I have a chance, I'm always going to pick identity controls over network because of this rich interaction and the rich context you get.
Yep. Now, when it comes to conditional access, I mean, there are two favorite things I have as a part of our conditional access engine is, so traditionally when somebody, not traditionally, but modernly, if they want to apply these principles of zero trust, they usually have a two choice. One, they can buy a box, which doesn't have much flexibility in terms of what policy you want to enable to implement this kind of an architecture. Or second, we use something like Azure AD conditional access, where it gives a lot of flexibility to end user who are applying these principles of zero trust architecture, user access. What I mean by flexibility is it is based on your company policy, security policy, what you want to do it, if, then, this, that, right? So if company policy says that, yes, the user always must have two-factor authentication, then you define it according to your company posture and the risk posture what you have. But if the employee is always working from the office and still you want to follow user trust architecture, then you may ignore that part that if it is within the network, still you verify it, but you may not need the second factor authentication always or in terms of when they are trying to access. So that flexibility is something which is one of my favorite part. Our conditional access engine comes with hundreds of pre-built scenarios. At the same time, you can bring your own scenarios as well. And one of the most recent, I was playing around with Azure AD last week, and I configured my demo tenant with geolocation. So it will only allow me to access my resource if I'm in Australia. As soon as the device goes to any other country, it doesn't prompt me even second factor. I get a signal on my phone say it's checking location, and the location meets straight away goes in. It doesn't ask me for the second factor authentication.
Yeah, and that's not IP geolocation. That's GPS geolocation on your device.
Exactly.
Yes.
Sorry, my bad. Yeah, GPS-based geolocation, which we have recently. And I was playing around with that feature, and I really enjoyed it. Such a user flexibility, allowing, not even prompting me to enter my second factor. It just checks the signal and goes in, which really works well in this part of the world because we have lots of mining companies where they don't allow you to bring the phones and all. So if somebody is just going there, automatically you disable the cameras and many other features based on conditional access what you have with combination of Intune and Azure Active Directory.
Nice. Yeah, and in one of the recent additions, because it's always been able to be sensitive and you apply the policy per application, right? But now they're adding the capability of, depending on the sensitivity of the data that you're accessing, you know, pulling from those Microsoft information protection signals, you can also have a different policy apply because, hey, this data is sensitive and it's classified this way. So I'm going to apply a more rigorous a security requirement. And so the constant innovation on this is phenomenal. Yep. And then actually the last thing I wanted to cover that actually recently got announced, I think it's in the last 3 to 6 months as of the time of this recording, is not just the initial authentication, but you can do this on an ongoing basis. It's called Continuous Access Evaluation, or CAE is the feature name. And actually, if you hover over that policy box, I think that one actually takes you to the documentation for that one. And so the idea of this is that if your device goes out of compliance because you got affected by ransomware or malware or something in the middle of it, or something happened to your account where it got compromised, where someone's been attacking your account while you're still logged into Office 365 or Salesforce or some on-premises application through the proxy, it can actually in real time, this is actually only for SharePoint and OneDrive, it can actually in real time cut that off for those applications that support it. So Exchange Online and SharePoint Online have it. We're working on a much more broader appeal. But the idea here is that real-time risk reduction, that, you know, even if it happened while you still have a valid live token, we can cut you off. You don't have to mess with token refreshes and all that kind of pain.
That gives a huge flexibility.
Absolutely. And so, you know, we've talked about sort of that medium to low risk, trying to get yourself bumped out with MFA, but occasionally you get high risk. And this usually happens on the account side when the attacker has successfully password sprayed an account that had a weak password, or the user's password got disclosed either through, you know, private law enforcement disclosure that, hey, this is something that we found during the course of an investigation, don't ask us the details, or more likely as part of a dump of username and passwords that was public or sold on the dark web. But we have different sources on it, and whenever we get those, we run those through and we flag any accounts that are actually that those would have logged in with, and then we mark them as a high-risk account, period, regardless of the session and everything else, because the bad guys know the password. And so in those cases, we can automatically say, you're not getting in, we're going to redirect you to a self-service password reset. And you don't even have to go through the help desk. You can go through it, prove you have your MFA, reset your password, and go on your merry way. So really cool way of dealing with those high risk without the cost of help desk and pain of it. Users happy with it. So it's a really, again, that nice user experience where we're making it easier for them to sort of fix their own stuff without having to go through all that challenge.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that a lot of organizations overlook, so we put a little extra focus on it in this updated revision of the reference architecture, is remote access. So pretty much just about any remote access solution on the planet that we've seen supports Azure AD for authentication. And this we talk about a lot more in the Beyond VPN section, but this helps you get out of having to do authentication and sync it up and configure it and make sure you patch your VPN remote access devices so it doesn't lose those credentials to an attacker that, you know, exploits an unpatched vulnerability. There's a whole lot of problems with doing authentication from a VPN device. So it's a lot easier to just wire that up, get your remote access to use this Azure AD access and all that conditional access goodness we just talked about when you're doing your VPN or other remote access. And it just simplifies the user experience. You know, if they're already logged in with it, they can just head on in. It's a much better experience. Absolutely. Anything to add there?
Now, since you touched upon VPN, I mean, VPN seems to be a bit outdated, but still it is heavily in use. And we saw in the recent one of the news we had for a compromise where how the VPN infrastructure was used to the attackers. What they did was they had a SQL injection attack on the VPN infrastructure. And once they got hold of VPN infrastructure, then they can literally move around in the network without any much of an issue. So securing your VPN and applying those second factor authentication is really important on that part as well. And the way we at Microsoft use it, we on-demand VPN, because we are not 100% cloud, and many of our customers are running in a hybrid mode as well. So they will end up using VPN for a while until they move everything towards as a part of their digital transformation. So securing that second layer with conditional access and second factor authentication goes a long way for securing the environment.
And the device validation, everything else.
Validation and everything else comes along with it. Yeah.
Yep. So we want everyone to eventually go beyond VPN because users don't like it. It's got security problems, et cetera. But that first step is really wiring in and getting that modern authentication into it. And of course, it doesn't stop there. There is an amazing array of support for conditional access, either native through Azure AD support. A number of applications have it, through simply just the OIDC, OAuth, SAML protocol support. Covers pretty much all of your modern apps, modern cloud apps, apps that are being developed currently today. And then we also can reach into the legacy applications through Azure AD App Proxy. And this becomes the second part of going beyond VPN.
Yep.
Is publishing those legacy applications so that you can actually access them through the portal or directly through links in a way that's just takes full advantage of all this conditional access to access your on-prem, and you don't have to go through the VPN. You don't have to provide that full port connectivity and all the risk that entails.
So Mark, this one is the most asked questions when we talk to customers, that what about our legacy application? What about our on-prem resources? If we are implementing a zero trust network access, how are we going to get rid of it? So here you go. The solution is you can design in a way that you can publish those through Azure AD App Proxy, and with a combination of your Azure AD and on-prem AD, those can be authenticated and reused as well. So it's not that you need to go into panic mode, start moving everything, and burn all your budget.
Yeah, it does take a little time to make your way through the legacy app catalog, because most organizations have a lot of legacy applications. So we recommend starting with the highest volume ones, the ones that support Kerberos in the more modern protocols, and then working your way through those. And one of the tricks that we've discovered, our internal IT department uses this, is to look at your VPN logs to see what apps the users are actually connecting to. And that gives a great signal on what to focus on first, and let's go ahead and get that one published. And you've got to really work with any app modernization, because so many organizations are migrating to the cloud. They're doing lift and shift. They're refactoring applications. They're building new replacement applications. They're replacing them with SaaS. So you got to make sure that the teams are in close coordination, so you don't go through all the effort of publishing something when you're about to replace it in 3 months. And so you really want to have that coordinated approach as you look through your application catalog.
Absolutely.
And so any final thoughts before we close out?
Oh, this is our Zero Trust user access, all the way from users to device, using conditional access as a policy engine, and then either full access to your resources or limited access or blocking, and continuously monitoring all the signals within your on-prem or cloud native SIM, such as Azure Sentinel, because that's what's going to give you a full visibility what's going on user side, device side, data, infrastructure, application, and everything else in your environment.
Absolutely. And this does work for not only your employees, but also your partners through Azure AD B2B, as well as the C could be many things. It could be citizens, it could be customers, it could be many other Cs. So that whole B2C and B2B space is also covered. So with that, thank you, Abbas, and thank you all for watching.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for having us.